Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Well, hello and welcome to Engage for Success Radio with me, Jo Moffat. Engage for Success is a not-for-profit movement. We're the UK's leading voice on the topic of employee engagement. We set out to raise awareness by running online events and some face-to-face events around the country. We're also developing research, publishing case studies and shining a light on great practice. Predominantly in terms of that sharing a light on great practice, we do that through these weekly radio shows, which we've been doing for over 11 years now. This is show number 648 in our weekly catalogue. And these weekly shows are now streaming live on YouTube. So do search Engage for Success Radio podcast if you would like to listen to them there. Otherwise, our full archive is available on our website at engageforsuccess.org, where you can learn more about the movement, where you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter, which will keep you up to speed and up to date with everything that we're doing, particularly around our leading UK Employee Engagement Survey and Benchmark Index, which is the 2026 report, is just being published as we speak. So certainly something to sign up for and read. So I'm, as I say, Jo Moffat. I'm one of the 3 regular hosts for Engage for Success Radio. And as with everyone who supports and is involved with the movement, we're all volunteers and we all have day jobs. Mine is that as I was founder and led a consultancy called Woodreed. Woodreed was all about leveraging the creative and insight-led approach of the advertising world to engage employees inside organizations. So bringing the external techniques and insight-led approach of marketing to bear internally. I sold Woodreed to 7 Seas, the culture consultancy, last year, and I now work for 7 Seas as a senior consultant. So I'm still involved with them, supporting their clients to create workplace cultures that make workplaces work, which for me means for employees as well as for shareholders and stakeholders. We need to be able to get all of those audiences right when it comes to creating a high-performing workplace. And very relevant, therefore, is our guest and topic today. As I say, radio show number 648. And today we're going to be talking about changing culture in a traditional manufacturing business. And I'm very pleased to welcome back a good friend of Engage for Success, actually, but it's, I think, your first time on Engage for Success Radio, Chris Houston, who is Managing Director of Tadweld. Tadweld are a steel fabrication business, which Chris joined in 2022. And Chris, as I said, a good friend of Engage for Success, has spoken on some of our online events in the past. And has also produced papers for our website. So, Chris, it's great to have you on the radio show for the first time.
Hi, Jo. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you very much for finding the time to join us today. I mentioned that you joined Tadweld in 2022. So I think before we start, it would be helpful for our audience to hear, well, first of all, a little bit about you. I know, we're talking manufacturing, we're talking about industry. These are all, the backbone of the British economy in many, many ways. So tell us first of all about you and your career up to the point that you joined Tadweld in 2022.
Oh gosh, I'll keep it brief, but I completed a business degree at Lancaster University, actually, and was fortunate enough to get a graduate program with Rolls-Royce, which is obviously one of the best British manufacturers that's been trading for over 100 years now. And that's really where I got some of my leadership experience, but also my focus around lean manufacturing and a quality-led manufacturing approach.
Right. And that's really what you've brought with you into what you're doing at Tadweld. It's interesting. I noticed from your bio that you worked in aerospace and defence. So was that the aerospace part of Rolls-Royce that you worked?
Yes, it was aerospace. I did work for a short time in the marine area as well, in terms of
Uh-huh.
boats and propellers and all that
Yes,
good stuff.
yes.
But yeah, predominantly in the aerospace sector. And then I subsequently left Rolls-Royce to work for an aerospace distribution business that distributed parts for aeroplanes all
Oh,
over the world as
goodness.
well.
It was only when I read that I realized we've got something in common, because when I started my career, and I'm talking a very, very, very long time ago now, I worked in sales for an aerospace company selling what are called aerospace fasteners. And the people that don't know, that's nuts and bolts. And the engineering company I worked for manufactured precision engineered nuts and bolts for the aerospace industry. And Rolls-Royce were indeed one of our clients.
Oh, well,
So
there you go. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's exactly the world that I worked in.
yeah, great world. A very small world, actually. Quite, yeah, quite a. Everyone knows everybody, don't they? And the companies know each other very well. I remember going to the Farnborough Air Show one year, and it was like a great big family party. It was just fabulous.
Plug, plug, plug for Farnborough Air Show is that it's on this week.
Oh, is it? Is
It
it
is.
really? There
It is
you
this
go.
week. There you
Goodness.
go. So
Well,
hello
yeah.
to everybody listening from Farnborough.
Indeed, indeed. Lovely. Okay. So then you joined, as I said, joined Tadweld in 2022. Tell us a little bit about them. Manufacturing business is all we know. So tell us more.
Yeah. So Tadweld, based in Tadcaster, and a
Mhm,
welding organisation, really. So we are a steel fabrication business. We work across sectors, a lot of core manufacturing sectors like the food and drink manufacturing,
mhm,
pharmaceutical, construction, and others.
mhm,
We have about 50 employees, and the organization's been around for 40 years, so it's got a really strong reputation and a really great client base. We work with some really big manufacturers in those industries, people like Coca-Cola, Britvic, Heineken, Nestle, McVitie's,
mhm.
and a lot of others as well. And really the business falls into two manufacturing categories in terms of steel. So we do structural steel work, which is your sort of classic um, I-beams, columns, and things that are structural, not necessarily that hold up the building itself, but things like mezzanines and gantries and structural elements within buildings. And
Mhm.
then we have a sheet metal side of the business, which is more akin to thin folded products like workbenches, hoppers, trays, and anything that is thin and bent. So they're really the two product types that we do.
Okay, lovely. And I think you said 50 employees. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 50
Right.
employees exactly.
And how do those 50 employees break down? Is it, I mean, are we talking highly skilled employees? Or are we talking a mixture of skilled and unskilled,
Yeah.
office, sales, manufacturing? How does it roughly break down?
So broadly, around 35 of those employees will be direct labour. So they are predominantly welder fabricators. We have
Mhm,
5 apprentices as well on that programme, and some semi-skilled labour within that. And
mhm,
then we have about 15 that are more office based, that
mhm.
range from operations management, sales, finance, HR, kind of front of house
Right.
support.
Right. It's just I'm not a great expert on this, but 5 apprentices in a company that sounds quite an investment. Is that, or is that half of the course?
Yeah, no, I think I'm sure we'll come on to talk in a little bit that we've been on quite a growth journey in the last 4 years, and
Mm,
that's been a big part of our investment is bringing on and sort of supercharging our apprenticeship program to make sure that we've got the workforce of the future. Welding is one of the areas that has been identified by the government as a really strategically important skill set, and one that has a foreseeable shortage in the not too distant future. So we've tried to, where possible, take that within our own control and really invest in the next generation.
I see. That's impressive. And do you tend to draw your workforce from the local area?
I'd say predominantly, yes, we do. Within a 30-minute commuting radius, really. So we're based in Tadcaster, which is North Yorkshire, but on the border of West Yorkshire. So we tend to pull from York, Leeds, Selby, Sherburn, and the sort of surrounding towns, cities, and villages to those areas.
Right. And am I right in saying I think there's a brewery in Tadcaster, is there?
There are 3 breweries in Tadcaster, actually. So
Okay.
there are Sam Smith's and what was John Smith's, that's now owned by Heineken, and then what was Bass Brewery, which is now owned by Molson Coors. So
Right.
it's fairly renowned for its brewing, and sort of Tadcaster and Burton in are the 2 biggest, the 2 brewing centres of the UK.
Big brewing hubs, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
lovely, interesting, lovely. Nice picture you painted there, Chris. Thank you for that. So, we're going to be talking about culture change, and I guess the most immediate question that springs to mind is why? What when you joined when you joined in 2022, was it immediately apparent, or was this something that you gradually realized needed to happen? What were the drivers for the culture change and the journey that you're going to be telling us about?
Yeah, I think for me, culture, or organization culture and engagement is a core part of my leadership style. And I think from my corporate experience, I learned that a great culture is probably the most effective way to affect organizational performance.
Right.
And with a good culture, that you can achieve greater rates of change, you can achieve higher growth cycles, you can have a happy workforce, you can have less accidents in the workplace, less absence. And so there's so many reasons for why investment in culture is the biggest lever as an MD that you have to affect organizational performance. And also, there are really some fundamental things like I want to come to work and enjoy the workplace that I come to, and your staff or the people who work at Tadweld feel the same way. Why would you not want to provide a workplace that everybody loves coming to? So I think that was the resounding why. And I think, Tadweld didn't have a terrible culture when I worked in the door.
Mm.
It just had never been deliberately or actively developed.
Kind
And
of
so
curated almost.
absolutely, yeah, the organization, just like every organization, had somewhat stumbled into its own culture, defined by the ex leaders of the organization as well as the current leaders of the organization, and the stories and the people, the environment that had been created. And as you've said, there hadn't been a deliberate cultivation of any culture specifically for the organization. And so that's really what I set about with the management team to do.
I see. Yeah. So it's interesting. So it wasn't so much that so you actually came to Tadwell having already learned and experienced and seen through your professional career up to that point the impact that a good culture can have on organizational performance. It wasn't that you came frustrated that you'd seen things done badly elsewhere and you wanted to have a kind of you wanted the chance to try things out. You kind of were already a supporter of this kind of way of running a business for all the reasons that you've outlined.
I think I'd seen the flip side of that as well. I was in the aerospace industry during COVID, which was obviously a very challenging time.
Yeah.
Significant layoffs and restructurings, and I worked within a private equity owned organization for 8 years, and private equity are notoriously focused on financial results. And so,
Yes.
I'd not seen every culture out there by any means, but I had a good feel for what I felt like a good culture could help an organization to achieve, and also the effects that a bad culture could have on an organization. And so it was just a focus for me and the type of leader that I am to cultivate and develop a culture that I felt was positive for growth and both the growth of the business, but also the growth of the people within the business.
Yeah, which go hand in hand, don't they? Really, I think
Absolutely.
it's interesting. So I mean, you would describe Tadweld as an SME, and I think it's fairly fair to say that a lot of SMEs won't intentionally set out to define and create and curate the kind of that culture that they might want or they might need. They tend often to stumble into it for whatever reason, um, and often I think it's this sense of, well, we haven't got time for that. We're an SME. We're all, it's all hands on deck. We just have to get on and do the job that we have to do. And I think what would be interesting to explore as we talk about the journey you've been on is did you have to set aside a lot of time to do this? Was it something that you had to decide not to do other things so that you could change the culture, or were you looking to sort of do this as part of the day job and and sort of woven into the way you do things around here?
Yeah, I think like anything, it's a combination of the two. But I would say for any major change program, whether it's implementation of a new system or a change of strategy or entering into a new market, you have to make a deliberate choice as a leader and as a leadership team to focus on the things that matter to you most. And what that realistically means is the allocation of your time and resources as an organization. And so certainly in that first year as MD, sales and culture were our number one priority. So when I walked in the organization, we didn't really have a formalized sales team or sales process. And that was a key focus for me as a leader. And we didn't really have a definitive view of the culture that we had and the type of organization we wanted to be. And that was a key focus for me as a leader. So within that, and certainly when you're starting along your engagement and culture development activity, like anything that matters and is hard, it takes time, but it's about allocating and finding the time to do it. And I think in terms of that why, there's lots of research and reading that people can do in their own time in terms of the why of employee engagement or the why of developing a positive culture, and there's lots of famous quotes about that as well. But in terms of Engage for Success's own research, we see organizations that have high engagement versus organizations have low engagement. They experience 2.5 times faster revenue growth. They see 62% less accidents. They get 40% lower employee turnover, and lots of other stats and benefits that I could reel off. But I think for me, there aren't many other things that I can focus on as a managing director that have that level of impact across the organization in every single function, which is why, when I entered the business, it was one of my top 2 priorities.
Yes. Okay. So where did you begin, Chris? Let's talk us through the journey. What was that start?
Yeah, I think two big things really. Number one, we started with a survey, an employee engagement survey, and what that allowed us to do is to canvass and understand the mood music in the organization, for want of a better expression, to understand what we were doing well, what we weren't doing very well, the areas that we could improve, and whether there were some very small and obvious things that didn't cost us a huge amount of money that we could do as an organization to make us a better place to work. So number one, I think, is it's essential that as a leadership team, you don't make assumptions about what needs to be fixed or what's important to people, and that you actually ask them. And in that way, you actually get a reflection of what is truly important to your workforce.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing that we did right at the beginning was we defined what was important to us from a values and behaviors perspective. And again, there's a lot of research around values and behavior, so I won't go into detail there, but we ultimately decided as an organization we would have three values. We landed on teamwork, quality and innovation, and we managed to fit everything that we wanted to say about how we wanted to be as an organization, how we wanted our employees to act at a staff, a management, and a senior level into those three value buckets. And we defined what good looks like, because we wanted to make sure that everybody that worked for Tadweld was clear on our expectations as well for how we would want them to behave as an employee of the company.
Yes, yes. And was that something, those values and behaviours, were they defined after the survey, or did that go on at the same time?
Yeah, I think it was fairly concurrent.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think we there was obviously, as I mentioned before, an existing culture in the organization. So what we ended up defining wasn't immensely radically different from the work that had already gone on and from the existing culture. We just helped define what we wanted to be. As a manufacturer, quality was really important to us, and we defined what quality meant as a value. Teamwork was really important to us. We defined what teamwork was as a value, and that then allowed us to articulate to the workforce what good looked like. So they ran in parallel. I think the engagement survey was more around what are the things that would make us a better workplace, or what are the things that don't make us a very good workplace at the moment, and what could we do to help improve that, as opposed to how would we want our workforce to act or behave on a daily basis.
Yeah. So where did that take you then? What happened once you'd sort of done that snapshot of, well, where are we really, and a little bit of where do we want to be? What did you then set out to do next?
Yeah, so I guess from the employee engagement survey, we got this huge amount of data and feedback from the team, some of which was very easy to act on because it was well defined, and others wasn't very well defined. So, for example, one of our areas for improvement was around communication. And so we didn't really know what good communication would look like to our workforce. So beyond that, we did do a few more focus groups or workshops where we pulled a few people together to ask for feedback on what would good look like.
Yeah.
And then in manufacturing, we're quite good at project managing things. And so we set up work streams, we defined the actions that we wanted to take, just like we would on any other customer project. And we project managed our own activity against that plan. And we communicated what we were going to do. And every 3 months, we have a half day in the business anyway, where we give a business update. But then we started to include these feedback elements around the employee engagement plan that said, you told us you wanted to do this. We said we were going to do, this to improve, and this is what we've actually done. And sometimes we stood up and said, we said we were going to do something and we haven't yet got round to doing it. And other times we said we plan on doing that and we did something different. But most of the time we were able to say, you said we weren't very good at this, and we've now gone away and done X, Y, and Z to help improve that situation. And all of that kind of regular comms around what we were doing really helped, like, people then give us more feedback. So maybe somebody in the survey was a little bit shy of giving something or giving some feedback, and then the more that people saw we were acting on that feedback, the more rich the conversation was, and the more feedback that we got along the way.
That is so true, isn't it? It's so proven. People, if people think that they're just shouting into the void and nothing ever changes, nothing ever happens, and it's just people are just going through the motions of a tick box exercise, they soon very quickly stop responding to these kinds of things. But if you can start anchoring what you've done what you're planning to do to what you've heard. And also, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying. You're talking about treating people as grown-ups, really, and being honest with them. Yes, we haven't done that yet, or why haven't we done that yet? Well, let's explain why we haven't done that yet, or maybe even we can't do that because X, Y, Z. And it's about being honest and transparent, isn't it, with what you're hearing? And,
Absolutely. And it's also important to recognize that we all own our workplace culture. Culture is not something that is imposed by management. That I walk into a building one day and I decide, what people are going to say or how people are going to act. It's a collective, organizational decision, and we all decide how we turn up in a morning, whether we're grumpy and fed up from something that's happened the day before or that morning, or that we bring our best selves to work. And we can't do that every day. People have lives outside of work, but that culture is a collective ownership and a collective ambition. It's not something that's imposed upon us.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. Was that something that people understood relatively soon, or was that something you had to work hard at to get people to understand that this isn't just a directive and a diktat from above, that everyone has a part to play in what this culture's about?
Yeah, I think, like any change curve, there are some people who instantly get it, others that get it after a little while, and there are those that really don't get it until 90% of everybody else has got it.
Right, yeah.
And then there's probably one or two people who just will never get it,
We'll never
or
get it.
don't want to
Yeah,
buy into that process. So
yeah.
it's not a one hit wonder. You don't, we did we to launch our values, we actually closed the business for a day and we did a big value launch event that was a great one-off activity. But it would be naive to think that, on a Monday we launched our values and on a Tuesday everybody is living and breathing and in love with, what we're doing from an organizational culture perspective. That
Yeah,
just isn't going to happen. And
yeah.
so for us, it's really about how we focus on making those real on a daily basis from our recognition programs. It's integrated out into how we interview and recruit people. It's integrated into how we reward, recognize, promote, and appraise. It really, those values then run through the whole organization. And I remember, we launched our values probably about 3 years ago now, and now they are a living and breathing part of the organization. But that took time.
Yeah, that was going to be my next quick question. When did you, I mean, obviously we're talking you're saying 3 years. When did you begin to think, actually, this is really starting to gain traction? Maybe you're not there yet. You weren't there yet at that point, but you were beginning to think, yeah, this is beginning to embed itself.
Um, we One of the things that we implemented was a recognition system that allowed anybody in our workforce to recognize anybody else in our workforce in line with our three company values. And I think culture takes on um, uh, kind of a breathing element or a living element when you have people in all different parts of the organization recognizing each other or understanding what that culture means in their different pockets of the business. And I think that probably took, I'd say, 6 to 9 months
Right.
of um, consistent reinforcement before, for example, one welder started to recognize another welder for one of um, one of our values at that point in time. And I think in that first year, we call them value tickets in our organization. I think we sent maybe 110 of them, probably as an MD. I sent 30 or 40 of them in that first year. And now I think last year we sent well in excess of 250, and I probably sent maybe 20 or 30 of those. So
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
about, over time, other people in the organization really get on board with. That's just one element of it. I think the other thing that was a demonstrable, measurable thing, and one of the advantages of conducting something like a survey, is that normally it will give you an output that at a macro level will say how engaged are people, but also at a more micro level give you scores in various areas, like I mentioned, communication, or management abilities, or do they feel fairly rewarded and recognized in work. And so we completed our first survey in 2023 and scored an engagement score of 67%, which is still a good score against national average, which I believe in your survey is somewhere in the mid to low 60s.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
And when we conducted that same survey 18 months later, we'd moved from 67% to 81% in those 18 months. And so what that really meant was that 4 out of our 5 employees loved coming to work. They really enjoyed coming to work and were bought into that process. So that was probably the first data point that meaningfully represented a big win in terms of, we're doing something right in terms of addressing the workforce's needs and some of the things that they want from us as an employer. And as a result, the people who work for us are really buying into what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, the latest Engage for Success survey has drawn some links for the first time to employee engagement and productivity. Looking at the specific drivers of productivity and how those are boosted where employee engagement scores are higher. So, I mean, clearly productivity is crucial to every business, whether they're in manufacturing or not. So, you've talked about some of the other KPIs as well. So there's lots and lots of reasons why this is worth doing. We are absolutely out of time, Chris. We could talk about this all day, but I want to finish with one very quick question. I wonder if you could answer for me, which is, was there one thing while you've been on this journey that you can look back from the position of 2026 and say, oh, actually we didn't quite get that right, or we could have done, if we'd have done that slightly differently, then maybe that would have worked out better? Was there either something that you feel you should have done differently, or was there a particular barrier that you have really struggled to overcome? Either question, you can choose.
I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest.
No.
Is there anything we would have done differently? I think, like anything, I would just say that it takes time, and I think it is easy to get frustrated with, as a business owner and director, is you want everything to happen really, really quickly. And
Of course,
it's important just to try and stay consistent and patient. So I think probably there were maybe times where I individually maybe got a little bit frustrated with myself through what seemed like a lack of action.
yes.
We'd manage a project plan and we'd set out objectives and things get in the way. But just because you haven't done something doesn't mean you can't change that today. You can start to do something today. So I think that would be my only thing, is that it's not easy to do a survey, but surveys are a great place to start. It is, in theory, easy to do a survey and to get the feedback, but really the rubber hits the road when you actually start to do the work. And things come up all the time, don't they? Other priorities and things come up all the time, but it's just important to keep that momentum. So I think that's probably the only thing, is don't be too harsh on yourself, but have a plan and hold yourself accountable. And ultimately, even if it takes you 18 months or 24 months to do it, rather than the 6 or 12 months you set out with, you're still making great progress along the way.
That's a lovely way to wrap things up, Chris, and a great lesson for people to learn from your experience, that sometimes you could have perhaps felt that you were looking with the benefit of hindsight, maybe you were a bit hard on yourself in terms of saying we're not getting there quick enough, but actually you go at the speed you go at. you stick to your plan, you're intentional about what you do, and you know where you want to get to. And then lo and behold, you wake up one day and you can look back and say, actually, we're a lot further forward than we were when we started this process. And that's a win, isn't it, really?
It is. And actually, we're about to do our third survey, hopefully coming up in the next 6 or 8 weeks, and we'll start again with whatever that looks like in terms of the feedback cycle.
Oh, that's lovely, Chris. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
All that remains really for me to say is thank you to you, Chris Houston, Managing Director of Tadweld, for joining us today and sharing your story with us. If people want to read more about it, by the way, can I just direct listeners to engageforsuccess.org and search for the pledge wall. And on the pledge wall, along with other organisations, there is the story of how Tadweld have used the Engage for Success 4 enablers to help support them on their journey of culture change. So there's more detail on what we've been touching on there. So thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening to Engage for Success Radio today. Don't forget you can download or stream any of the great shows from our archive at any time. That's over at engageforsuccess.org too. And as I say, sign up for the newsletter because that will keep you up to date with the latest on our survey and benchmark index. So thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.